Narcissistic rage is one of those things that you don't want to have to deal with in your life if you don't have to. Let's talk about why on today's Ask Us Show. Think of a small balloon, and if you popped it, it's kind of no big deal. The balloon's only this big. That's an average size ego. Now let's make that same balloon be this big and then you pop it. Well, there's going to be much more of a dramatic result, and that comes from a bigger ego, a narcissist. So if there's a narcissist in your life, you may have seen the results of when that balloon is popped, so to speak. When they're exposed, when they're vulnerable, when you've pointed something out that they don't want to hear or deal with. It's all about their ego. They've been exposed. It's horrible. And so you have to deal with narcissistic rage. If you have a family member or you're involved with a loved one or a friend who's a narcissist, just remember that the rage is there mainly to try to control you. It's to get you to give in. It's just another way for them to avoid the inner void, the emptiness, by creating all this havoc. So if they can make drama over here and be very rigid, spewing out all their rage, then the focus is back on them in some way, right? So it's a way to now be the center of attention again. And also in an unconscious way, it's also a way to avoid looking inward at themselves. Self-reflection, being still with oneself, getting to know what we're all about. That's something that scares the hell out of them because they would have to look at what they don't want to see. Healthy rage, we'll say, or healthy anger is when somebody realizes they're angry. It's a feeling. They can name it. They can feel it. They can see how it's affecting their body, their breathing. They can figure out emotionally what's going on with them. If they're confused about it, they can talk to the person about it. Like, tell me more about that. Let me understand. There's a curiosity around the anger. It's still not the most pleasant feeling in the world, but at the same time, it's not going to kill you. It's just a feeling like any other feeling. And so when someone gets angry in that way, it can be healthy. They're trying to understand the underlying issue. What's going on? But with narcissistic rage or anger, it's different. They have to put on a show all the time and live behind a facade because they feel so empty inside. There's such a huge void here that when the veil's lifted, for example, in The Wizard of Oz, you look back there behind the curtain, there's just a little old man there. He's not really capable of much. The same thing with most narcissists. It's all about the huff and puff. They can put on a good act, and if they're exposed, they can break into rage. They're furious. Or if they're not furious, they're really good at kind of getting you back somehow. They can be very passive aggressive. So the narcissist can be either covert, which is more hidden. They're going to respond in a more hidden way, or overt, where they're going to just blow up and they don't care how it comes out. But either which way it's going to come out. I know my own mother was more of a covert narcissist, so you better believe something was coming around. Usually the silent treatment and over-the-top disappointment to something that's happened in a child's life, something way out of proportion because it's how they see themselves. It's not really so much about what the child's going through, it's how others are going to now view that parenting style of the narcissist because other people may judge them to be a bad parent. It's so much more about appearance. When the narcissist's illusion of grandiosity is shattered, then they have to deal with that weak, vulnerable part that they don't want anybody to know about, especially themselves. From a parent, this can take the form of neglect, being really sarcastic with you, passive aggressive, the silent treatment, like I mentioned, and ongoing resentment. You can just see it cooking on the stove, simmering away. You're going to feel that resentment. So for a narcissist, this can really pop up when they don't feel in control. Somehow they're reminded of their own inadequacy or shame or self-loathing or something like that. When they don't get their way, that's a big one. When they're caught breaking the rules or doing something wrong. Another big one is when they're not treated as the center of attention. That's huge for them. Anything that causes some sort of impact or a blow to their self-image, their ego. And God forbid if they're held accountable for something because they're really good at lies, right? They're good at putting on. They're good at how things look versus what's really happening. And so if you call them out on something, then they're being exposed. So then you're going to feel that rage. And especially in a parent-child relationship, it's even more confusing to deal with. I mean, it's confusing enough with coworkers where you're all adults or with friends if you're in the same age group. But when you're a little kid trying to figure out a crazed, narcissistic, rageful parent, very, very confusing. And depending on how far it goes, it can be traumatic. The reaction usually is about some form of manipulation because they have to kind of win themselves back, put themselves back up on the pedestal somehow. And the only way to really do that, if there's nothing really there of substance, is they have to cause it by manipulation. So in families, there's a lot of estrangement. It's hard for families to work through this unless they have family therapy, because children are often pitted against each other. Sometimes the narcissistic parent will also emotionally smother one of their children. That can cause sibling rivalry, but also just having a narcissist there in the family where everybody's tiptoeing around, they're walking on eggshells to some degree. It's a tough way to grow up. And if there's any kind of conflict, it can lead to family estrangement. Because the ability to work it through, to talk about things, to negotiate, nothing's been handled that way in the family. So when something happens that causes conflict, then things are handled in a very black and white and rigid way. It's either I love you or I hate you. If you're married, this rage may turn into like, we're getting a divorce, not understanding the benefit of talking it through, working it through with your significant other. People can meet in the middle. You can compromise. Narcissists have a hard time with that idea. So then they tend to just cut off relationships, even with good friends. You crossed me, you're gone. That's it. Because of this behavior, narcissists have very few true good friends because they don't know what the meaning is of a true connection. A true connection involves being vulnerable and honest and sharing, and that builds intimacy. We share our flaws, but we also share our strengths. We'll call that the gray area, what I just described. They don't handle the gray area well. They have to be black or white. It's the only way they know how to survive. And in their mind, it does feel like survival because they're always hiding something. There's always this fear-based inner void that they want to pretend is not there. And so they have to act like it's not there. So if there's a narcissist in your life, you need to be aware of how you have healthy boundaries with them. You do indeed need to have healthy boundaries, because if not, you'll be trampled emotionally. So I'd love to hear your thoughts or comments about narcissism in general. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrunk.